When the company helicopter broke down, the CEO mocked a janitor by asking him to fix it. But when the engines roared to life minutes later, everyone froze. For CEO Victoria Sterling, the state-of-the-art helicopter on the tarmac was a symbol of her power, but this morning, it was a useless piece of metal, grounding a billion-dollar deal. In the background, janitor James Allen pushed a mop. A single dad working 2 jobs, he was a ghost in the machine of Sterling Dynamics. What the furious CEO couldn't imagine was that the quiet janitor held the key. The helicopter was about to become the stage for the most shocking moment of Victoria Sterling's life, and the opportunity of a lifetime for the one man everyone had ignored. James Allen's life was a meticulously constructed fortress of quiet sacrifice, built brick by brick for his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Their small, third-floor apartment, filled with the scent of cinnamon toast and the gentle, almost apologetic hum of an aging refrigerator, was a universe away from the gleaming steel and glass of Sterling Dynamics. This morning, like every morning, began with a sacred ritual. He braided Lily's long brown hair, his large, calloused hands that could disassemble a turbine engine, moving with the surprising gentleness of a seasoned artist. "Dad, you make the braids too tight," she'd giggle, and he'd reply with the same joke every time. "That's so your brilliant ideas don't fall out." After his wife, Sarah, had been stolen from them by a sudden, merciless illness, he'd dismantled his entire former life with the same precision he once reserved for complex machinery. Gone was the high-stakes, high-altitude career where his name, Chief Warrant Officer Allen, was whispered with a mixture of awe and reverence. He had traded the roar of jet engines for the slosh of a mop bucket, the respect of generals for the anonymity of a janitor's uniform. He needed predictable hours. He needed to be there to decipher the mysteries of 4th-grade math, to attend parent-teacher conferences where he would sit awkwardly in a chair built for a child, to ensure Lily never, ever felt the cavernous void her mother had left behind. He had promised Sarah he would always put Lily first. For her, he would become invisible 1,000 times over, a price he paid gladly. At Sterling Dynamics, his invisibility was a masterclass. He moved through the sprawling hangars and opulent offices like a phantom, his presence marked only by the gleaming, streak-free floors he left behind. He was a silent fixture, a part of the background scenery, but his mind was anything but silent. He'd clean up after frantic huddles of engineers whose panicked conversations about parasitic draws, faulty avionics, and intermittent FADEC failures were a language he understood with perfect, native fluency. It was the language of his past, a dialect he had not just spoken, but had helped to write. He'd hear a young, bright-eyed engineer confidently theorize about a gyroscopic imbalance causing a vibration, and he would have to physically stop himself from walking over and explaining that the vibration signature was all wrong for a gyro. It was textbook harmonic resonance from the new composite tail rotor assembly, interacting with a specific RPM range. He'd listen to them debate a fuel flow problem for hours and bite his tongue, knowing with absolute certainty that it was a common sensor calibration error caused by temperature fluctuations, something a 5-minute software patch could fix. He remained silent, his world-class expertise locked away behind a polite, vacant nod. His name was James, but to the titans of industry he served, he was just the janitor, and that was the way it had to be. In the starkest contrast imaginable, Victoria Sterling's day began with the thunderous roar of her own self-importance. She didn't just enter a room, she conquered it, the atmosphere crackling around her. Her temper was a legendary force of nature within the company, a tool she wielded with the precision and brutality of a master swordsman. This morning, that force was aimed squarely at her head engineer, a man named Robert Johnson who was visibly wilting under the verbal assault. Victoria was on the phone with a banking consortium in Tokyo, her voice a low, menacing growl that promised catastrophic consequences. "Don't you dare talk to me about market fluctuations. I am telling you, the deal will be signed, in person, before the markets open, in 8 hours. This isn't just another acquisition. This solidifies our dominance for the next decade. Have the funds ready to transfer." She slammed the custom-designed phone down with such force that a hairline crack appeared on its obsidian surface. She rounded on Johnson, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. "I don't pay you a $250,000 salary to be mystified, Johnson," Victoria thundered, her voice echoing through the cavernous, cathedral-like hangar. "That is a $10 million Augusta Westland AW-139, the crown jewel of my fleet. Right now, it is a $10 million paperweight. The deal that secures the future of this entire company closes in 8 hours in a boardroom 300 miles from here, and I'm staring at my own useless, oversized lawn ornament." The team of 6 engineers, all highly paid experts handpicked by Johnson, looked utterly exhausted and defeated. They had been working on the helicopter for nearly 48 hours straight, fueled by cold coffee and palpable fear. They were baffled by a mysterious electrical drain that would kill the main and auxiliary batteries within minutes, but only when the main engines were cold. Once started, the alternators provided more than enough power, but getting it to start was the impossible hurdle. They had run every diagnostic the manufacturer's software provided, swapping out costly components and tracing wiring harnesses until their eyes blurred and the complex schematics swam before them. To Victoria, their exhaustion wasn't a sign of dedication. It was a symptom of unforgivable incompetence. She saw them not as valuable assets, but as liabilities costing her millions with every passing, ticking second. The air in the hangar was thick with the acrid smell of ozone from fried circuits, the cloying sweetness of jet fuel, and the almost tangible scent of palpable fear. After another failed attempt to start, the auxiliary power unit ended with a pathetic whimper and the dimming of the cockpit lights. Johnson, the head engineer, finally broke. He looked like a man who had aged a decade in 2 days. Wiping a fresh layer of sweat and grease from his brow with the back of his hand, he approached the CEO like a man walking to his own public execution. "Miss Sterling, ma'am, we've isolated the drain to the secondary avionics bus. We know that much. But we cannot pinpoint the specific component causing the draw. It's not on any of the main systems. The schematics are clean. To find it without tearing the entire bird apart, wire by wire, it could take another day, maybe more." Victoria Sterling's furious gaze swept the hangar, a predator scanning for weakness. It passed over the defeated, downcast faces of her expert team, over the silent, multi-million-dollar machine that was mocking her with its inertia, and finally, it landed on James Allen, who was quietly emptying a trash receptacle near the hangar's far wall, separating recyclables with methodical care. A cruel, mocking smile spread slowly across the CEO's face. It was the smile of a cornered lioness that had found a new, weaker target to vent her rage upon. "You, janitor," Victoria's voice boomed, sharp and dripping with contempt. Every head in the hangar snapped towards the sound. The engineers turned, following her gaze, their expressions shifting from fear to confusion. James froze mid-task, a plastic bottle in his hand, suddenly the unwilling center of a very unwelcome spotlight. "You look like a man who knows how to fix things," Victoria sneered, her voice laced with venomous sarcasm as she began to walk towards James. The engineers parted before her like the Red Sea. "Tired of that mop? Feeling ambitious today? I'll make you a deal, a little challenge." She gestured grandly, theatrically, at the inert helicopter. "Find the problem that these 6-figure geniuses can't solve. You've got 20 minutes. You do that, and I'll give you a $10,000 bonus. Cash, right out of my pocket." The hangar fell utterly, profoundly silent. The only sound was the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. The engineers stared, mouths agape, a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity on their faces. It was a joke, of course. A vicious, humiliating spectacle designed to belittle her highly paid team and vent her volcanic anger on the lowest man on the totem pole, the one person who couldn't fight back. James's mind, a machine that had been forced into low-power mode for years, roared to life. $10,000. The number echoed in his head. He thought of Lily. He saw, with perfect clarity, the page of specialists' bills for her braces sitting on their small kitchen table. He thought of her aging, second-hand laptop that crashed every time she tried to do her school research. Her small sigh of frustration a dagger in his heart. $10,000 wasn't just a lifeline, it was a new computer that would empower her. It was the medical debt erased. It was the first real vacation they could take since Sarah died, a chance to see the ocean she always talked about. It was a breath of clean, fresh air after years of drowning in quiet desperation. He looked up, past the helicopter, and met the CEO's smug, arrogant face. He saw the smirks beginning to form on the faces of the younger engineers, the pity on Johnson's. And in that single, crystallizing moment, years of swallowed pride, of silent observation, of pretending to be less than he was, finally sparked to life like a faulty ignition switch. He straightened his back, and the weary, deferential stoop of the janitor fell away, replaced by the ramrod-straight posture of a soldier. He met the CEO's gaze, and for the first time, Victoria Sterling saw that the janitor's eyes were not vacant, but calm, steely, and intensely focused. "All right," James said, his voice firm and clear, utterly devoid of fear. It cut through the silence like a laser. "I'll take your bet. But there's a condition. If I can't find it, you don't fire me. I'll just finish my shift." For a fleeting second, Victoria was taken aback by the sheer audacity of the counteroffer. The janitor was negotiating with her. Then her cruel, arrogant smile returned, wider this time. "Fine. You've got yourself a deal. You have 20 minutes. She theatrically checked her gold Rolex. "And the clock is ticking." The stunned silence in the hangar gave way to a ripple of snickers and disbelieving murmurs. The engineers looked at each other, a mix of pity and dark amusement on their faces. "Is this guy serious?" One of the younger ones whispered to his colleague. "He'll be lucky if he can find the door to the cockpit," another muttered. "Sterling's finally lost it. This is just cruel." James ignored them all. His entire world narrowed. The noise of the hangar, the arrogant smirk of the CEO, the whispers of the crew fading into a dull, distant hum. He walked not towards the helicopter, but to the master tool chest against the wall, his movements calm, economical, and deliberate. The engineers watched, expecting him to grab a large, greasy wrench, or a standard socket set, the tools of a brute force amateur. Instead, he bypassed the heavy-duty drawers completely and opened a smaller, more specialized one labeled Avionics and Diagnostics. His hands, the same hands that had pushed a mop just minutes before, now selected a high-precision Fluke 8000 series multimeter, a Canon plug pin-out extraction tool, and a small, angled inspection mirror with a built-in LED light. It was the toolkit of a surgeon, not a mechanic, and the sight of it sent the first small tremor of doubt through the assembled experts. He didn't go to the cockpit or the main engine bay, the areas where the expert team had spent the last 48 hours creating a rat's nest of diagnostic cables. Instead, he walked with unwavering, unhesitating purpose to a small, unassuming service panel near the tail boom, an area the engineers had collectively dismissed as housing-only non-essential. Auxiliary cabin amenities. With a practiced quarter turn of a flathead driver, he opened the panel, revealing a dense, intimidating nest of wiring. His hands moved with a familiar, fluid grace that was utterly, shockingly at odds with the janitor's uniform he wore. It was the muscle memory of a master craftsman. He clipped the multimeter's black lead to the panel's grounding stud. Then, with the focused intensity of a bomb disposal expert, he touched the red probe to two specific terminals within the jungle of wires. His eyes flickered to the reading on the screen, a steady -0.8A, a parasitic draw. His expression remained unreadable. Then, using the delicate pin-out tool, he expertly navigated the dense connector block, located a single, thin blue wire from the dozens present, and with a gentle, practiced motion, extracted its pin from the large block. He held the wire up in the air, its tiny metal pin still attached. He then turned, not to the CEO, but to the head engineer, and his voice was no longer that of a quiet janitor, but of a commander on a mission deck. It was calm, direct, and filled with an easy authority that stunned every single person present into silence. "Mr. Johnson," he said, holding the dumbfounded engineer's gaze, "would you please try to start the auxiliary power unit now?" Johnson, moving as if in a trance, simply nodded and relayed the command to a junior engineer waiting nervously in the cockpit. A moment later, the high-pitched, rising whine of the APU spooled up, healthy, strong, and unwavering. The cockpit lights, which had flickered and died on every previous attempt, blazed to brilliant, steady life. The massive avionics screens in the glass cockpit booted up one by one, displaying stable, normal readings across the board. The parasitic drain was gone. The janitor had found and fixed a fault in under 10 minutes that had stumped a 6-man team of highly paid experts for 2 days. Victoria Sterling stood frozen, her jaw slack, the mocking smirk completely vaporized from her face. She stared at the glowing, vibrant cockpit, then at the quiet man in the janitor's uniform holding a single, insignificant-looking blue wire. How did you do that?" she whispered, the words barely audible, stripped of all their earlier bravado. James finally turned his full, undivided attention to the CEO. He held up the wire for Victoria to see. "It's the wiring for the de-icing unit on the VIP champagne cooler in the aft cabin," he stated simply, his voice even. "It's a third-party add-on, installed after the aircraft left the factory. It's not on the standard Augusta Westland schematic your men were using. It's tied into the secondary avionics bus for power. The thermostat is a cheap, off-the-shelf component with a known design flaw. It failed in the on position. So the heating element was drawing full power constantly, even when the aircraft was cold and shut down. It created a slow, persistent drain that wouldn't show up on a standard diagnostic for the main flight systems because it's technically a cabin comfort feature." He paused, letting the simple, devastatingly logical information sink in. "It's not a major helicopter failure. It's a $5 part in a luxury add-on." Section 4. The Resolution and a New Beginning. Victoria Sterling, a woman who dominated every room, a titan of industry who bent the world to her will through sheer force of personality, was utterly and completely speechless. She walked slowly, hesitantly, towards James, a hot, profound flush of shame rising from her neck and spreading across her face. She hadn't just misjudged a man, she had publicly mocked and humiliated him based on the clothes he wore. She had looked at a master and seen only a mop. The sheer, staggering depth of her own arrogant ignorance was a revelation that shook her to her very core. "Who times are times you?" she asked again, her voice now quiet, humbled, and filled with a genuine, desperate curiosity. James allowed himself a small, weary smile, as if a great weight was finally lifting from his shoulders. "My name is James Allen," he said, his voice steady and clear. "Before I was a janitor here, I was a chief warrant officer, 4 inches the U.S. Army. I spent 15 years as a lead technical inspector and master mechanic for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. My specialty was troubleshooting complex, intermittent electrical failures on the most advanced and modified helicopters in the world, usually in the worst conditions imaginable. I left the service when my wife passed away. My daughter needed a full-time father more than the Army needed another mechanic." The story settled over the room like a physical weight, silencing any remaining whispers of disbelief. The engineers stared at James with newfound, profound respect. This wasn't a lucky guess. This was the result of a lifetime of world-class, battle-tested experience, forged in the crucible of the world's most elite special operations unit. Victoria finally reached James and stood before him, looking him squarely in the eye. The arrogance was gone, vaporized, replaced by a raw, deep-seated respect. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Allen," Victoria said, her voice thick, with a sincerity no one in the company had ever heard from her before. She then turned to address the entire hangar, her voice resonating with newfound humility. "I owe all of you an apology. My behavior was unacceptable. I let pressure and arrogance blind me, and I was wrong." She turned back to James. "That $10,000 bonus is yours. Of course. But that isn't an apology. That was a bet you won, fair and square. It's not nearly enough." She took a deep, steadying breath, her mind working with its old speed but on a new course. "Effective immediately, I am creating a new position. James Allen is the new Senior Director of Maintenance and Quality Assurance for the entire Sterling Dynamics fleet. He will report directly to me. He will have the authority to ground any aircraft, to sign off on all major repairs and modifications, and to rebuild our maintenance protocols from the ground up." She looked at Johnson, not with anger, but with a new resolve. "His first task will be to lead your team in a full audit of every third-party modification in our fleet to prevent this from ever happening again. You will all learn from him." Victoria wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, "as a down payment on the debt I owe you for the lesson you've taught me today about what's truly important, Sterling Dynamics will establish a full academic scholarship in your daughter's name, Lily Allen. It will be fully funded to cover her entire education from this day through to a master's degree at any university she chooses, anywhere in the world." Tears, hot and sudden, welled in James's eyes. For years, he had worried constantly about Lily's future, scrimping and saving, patching holes in a perpetually leaking boat. Now, in the span of 20 minutes, her future was secure. This wasn't just a job or money, it was freedom. It was peace of mind. It was the recognition he had sacrificed for the most important person in his life, returned to him tenfold. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice choked with years of unspoken emotion and gratitude. "Thank you." 6 months later, the culture at Sterling Dynamics was unrecognizable. James Allen, now a respected leader who wore his new company uniform with the same quiet dignity as his old one, had transformed the maintenance division. He had implemented a new system of cross-team diagnostics, encouraging mechanics, engineers, and even pilots to collaborate on problems without fear of blame. He instituted integrity checks, where, every Friday, teams would openly discuss mistakes and near misses, not as failures, but as learning opportunities. Fear was replaced with curiosity. Arrogance was replaced with a hard-won mutual respect. Victoria Sterling, humbled and profoundly changed by the encounter, often sat in on these meetings, listening far more than she spoke, valuing the input of every person in the room, regardless of their title. That day, in a hangar filled with tension and the smell of jet fuel, Victoria Sterling learned the most valuable and profitable lesson of her career. A person's worth is not measured by their job title, the car they drive, or the clothes they wear, but by their character, their knowledge, and the silent dignity with which they carry themselves. James Allen became a legend at Sterling Dynamics, not just for his incredible skill, but for his humility and his unwavering dedication to his daughter. His story became a cornerstone of the company's new ethos, a powerful, daily reminder that heroes and geniuses often live among us, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment they are truly seen. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video, subscribing for more inspirational stories, and sharing it with someone who believes greatness can be found in the most unexpected places.